Hi there guys, and welcome to another Sweet Chinwag. This time it is Dan, not joined by Reardon or Sam, but we are joined by the amazing Leo London, all the way from Canada. Leo, if you'd like to introduce yourself quickly.
Hi, I'm Leo London, gentleman grappler. Been wrestling since 2010 in Canada and got my initial training in Greece. Yeah.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So just to start off, what are some of your earliest memories in wrestling? How you got into it? Was it like a big thing in your family, or was it just something you found out later on in life?
So once I moved, I was a young teenager when I moved to my papa in Greece, and my friends liked wrestling, but I didn't once I got there. So I went, I would watch it, and then I slowly got interested. And when I came home and talked with my papa about it, it was right in the middle of the Attitude Era. Can I cuss?
Yes, absolutely. That's fine.
Okay. So my friends are watching Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock and all these guys. And my papa goes, "You are not watching that shit." And he's like, "If you want to watch wrestling, watch this." And he gave me old World of Sport tapes. So
love World of Sport there.
Yeah.
Right after my own heart.
I grew up loving Johnny Saint, Jim Breaks. I loved Big Daddy.
Yeah, all names that we absolutely love.
Yeah. Les Kettle, I loved him.
Yeah.
And Flash Gordon, I really liked as well.
Yes.
So that's kind of what I went into university with. And once I arrived at university, I discovered that my tapes were currency and I could trade them for other tapes.
Oh, wow.
And I'm dating myself by saying VHS tape, but that's when I started to get into a little bit of Japanese wrestling, and I would pick up a lot of Pro Wrestling Noah tapes, a lot of Misawa, that's who made me want to become a wrestler at first. But I was like, I'm too small. And then one summer, I was watching a Mike Quackenbush match, and I wasn't really paying attention. I was kind of doing my work, and then he did the lightning lock beta, which is he hooks him for a Russian leg sweep, rolls backwards, so now the guy is face down, it's a complete roll, and then hooks the guy's leg behind his head, almost like the stretch muffler.
Yeah,
it's very cool. And I was like, that is the coolest move I have ever seen in my life. And I rewinded it 4 times to see how it was done. And then I took up some training in Greece as a summer activity, didn't do anything with it for years until I moved here in 2010. And I figured it would be a good way to make friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's when I started training here. At first it was under Rob Stardom, and then I moved on to training under Outlaw Adam Knight, who's been to Japan in the Smash promotion that was run by Tajiri for a while.
Yes, absolutely. Know that one.
Antonio Scorpio, who's a mainstay here. He was in DDT for a while. I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by very good people to help me look much better than I actually am.
No, I absolutely love that though, and knowing that you kind of came from maybe from a slightly different perspective, seeing kind of the World of Sport style to then seeing Misawa to then being introduced to the more American style.
Yeah, which I actively dislike. I hate the Attitude Era. I think it's bad.
We've been very outspoken before how we very much hold on to it being a product of its time.
Yeah, for sure. To me, the Austin versus Rock WrestleMania matches where they just unload 50 punches to start the match.
Yeah.
I just roll my eyes because, oh.
I totally understand where you're coming from. It's the same as, we've done episodes and talking to people about, World of Sport and British wrestling and introducing people to Les Kellett and having people laugh at us about it. So it's really cool to hear someone else kind of come to it from that perspective and have that kind of slightly different view rather than coming from the, you know, the Rock, Austin, Hogan sphere, as it were.
Yeah, that I can definitely appreciate that outlook. Like, I know, who am I to criticize The Rock and Austin, right? But
Oh yeah.
my brain tells me if you punch a guy 50 times and he doesn't fall over, you may as well stop punching him because it's obviously not working. But yeah, that's why I didn't like it. But eventually I started kind of watching the WWE. I remember the first episode of SmackDown I ever watched live as it happened was Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle in the Iron Man match.
Oh, what a match.
And I fell in love with Brock Lesnar on that day. And ever since then, he can do no wrong. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, so that's when I started getting really into WWE. Like, I loved Brock, Kurt, Shelton and Haas.
Yeah, we've always been huge fans of Kurt.
Yeah, like, he's phenomenal. I feel so bad for him for like the punishment that his body had to endure and the problems that, well, a lot of people in the industry have to go through because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got my brother his autograph though.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he was appearing in Winnipeg for a signing while I was in another city. So I paid one of my friends to go get it. And my brother's favorite wrestlers in order are The Rock, Colt Cabana,
Understandable.
and Kurt Angle.
An absolutely amazing trio right there.
I told, so we were going to wrestle Colt Cabana for the first time. And my brother was so shy, he wouldn't talk to Colt Cabana. He was just standing there quietly, and he forgot all of his spots. Kurt was like, "What'd you do?" And my brother was like, So I pulled Colt aside. It was like, "Listen, you're my brother's second favorite wrestler." It goes, The Rock, Colt Cabana. And he goes, "How the fuck am I just below The Rock?" And I was like, "Can you do something with him in the match? It would mean the world to him." And I was like, and he goes, "He can pin me." And yeah, my brother pinned him in the match. So yeah, Colt, and ever since then he's remembered that and will always like walk up to my brother, like wrap his arm around him and stroke his beard and stuff.
Oh, I absolutely love stories like that.
Oh yeah, he was been a total gem every time we've met him. And I've been very fortunate to get to work with a lot of people, and there's only one unpleasant encounter with like a legend, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's absolutely fantastic, and it's always amazing to hear, you know, those stories from people who have been working that come along the journeys and the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Jimmy Hart was on tour with us once, and he's like helping with the ring and stuff, and I'm like, "Jimmy, what are you doing?" He actually goes like, "Oh, I just wanted to help out, baby. I love it." I'm like, "Whoa, you actually talk like that." We bonded over having matching Chuck Taylors.
Oh, now that is something amazing.
Yeah, we had the same shoes on, and we became buddies. He watched all the matches and gave feedback to everybody. He was super nice. We had to pry him away from the ring. He was just a gem to be around.
That's so fantastic.
Yeah.
So moving on next, as anyone who will have seen your Twitter profile or your YouTube will know that you are quite the fan of anime, and so
specific ones, yes.
Yeah, specific ones. But what I wanted to ask was, how far or have you ever been inspired by anime during the time that you've been wrestling?
So I've been fortunate enough to be able to wrestle at like the Canadian Comic-Cons and stuff in like huge events. I can't remember how many people were there, but like for us, it was huge, like 15,000 or something attended. And like everyone was watching the shows. It was just packed everywhere.
Yeah.
Something like that. And like Kevin Nash was on the show for some reason. And funny story about that is the guy he was wrestling was also like 7 feet tall, and he wanted to do a springboard elbow, but the ring was a small ring. It was only like a 14, and Kevin Nash is like, how is that even possible? And why the fuck are you doing a springboard elbow?
That's a completely understandable question, I think.
Yeah. He was really funny in the back too. One of my friends were just walking by him, and Kevin Nash just playfully like stuck his arm out, and my friend like full on took the bump. And Kevin Nash goes like, I like this kid. And the kid just gets up and walking. So that is where I got to play with my anime influences the most, where I was doing ridiculous stuff like hitting Kamehameha in matches. And I never got to do anything like super over the top. But one time when I was in a match with Kenny Omega, I had the idea of like, what if you go for your Hadouken and I go for the Kamehameha at the same time, and then they clash, and we do the whole anime like explosion where everybody falls off the ring apron and stuff. And he was like, that's pretty good, but I don't think the people would get it. I'm like, oh, that's okay.
Oh my god, having a moment like that must have been amazing, really, to be able to be in a ring and be thinking of something like that.
Yeah. Kenny's always been open to ideas, and like I've learned a lot from him throughout all the matches I've had with him. I've been really lucky to wrestle him 8 times.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And I have a winning record. Just saying. I'm 5-3. Yeah, so my whole promotion is called Premier Championship Wrestling, and
yes,
that's where he started. So whenever he's in town at home, he'll come to our shows and do them as like support your local indie. And
yeah, like the special hometown guest.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird because he's treated like he's an import, but he's not at all.
Yeah.
He's actually at home for once. I would say though that's the extent of the anime influence in my wrestling. I haven't really. My characters just don't line up with that a lot.
Yeah.
So
do you think that there's much? Do you think there's ever really much crossover between the two?
You never know. I think now there is for sure, because being a nerd or a geek or what have you is like cool and trendy.
Yeah.
So it's much more wildly accepted to be open about what you enjoy.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. I definitely feel like I've seen it coming through slightly more in recent years.
Yeah, like you can be proud of what you're nerdy about and passionate about, and you always should have been. But when I grew up, you got beat up for wearing like Star Wars shirts to school.
Oh, I even though I'm much on the slightly younger end, I still remember being made fun of for the stuff that I used to like. So
yeah. I'm glad that very slowly and gradually society is making progress and improving beyond such petty squabbles.
It certainly is. It's slow, but it's getting there.
Yeah, there's always going to be the ones like messing it up for everyone else, but generally I feel that we are moving in a positive direction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely feel that's slowly coming across in the more general wrestling world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I haven't been able to experiment with anime so far, but I have had ideas for future matches that haven't happened yet, where I would like get out a dual disc from Yu-Gi-Oh! And play all the Exodia cards, and the guy would take a huge bump.
Okay, now I live for that idea.
So I'm friends with this guy. His name's Roy Dragneel, and his mom has one of my shirts as merchandise, and he was a babyface and I was a heel, and I pitched this idea where we would take a double bump, like where people would do the 10 count, but we'd hit so hard that we both rolled out to the opposite side of the ring, and then the song Duel of the Fates from Star Wars would start, and we'd stand up with lightsabers that we've got from under the ring. We go to fight, and I'm taking the Vader role, and I go to beat him and say, like, I'm your father. Look at your mother, you know it's true. And then I would point, and then she's wearing our shirt. But as Dragneel said, that's a great spot. It's not a great Dragneel spot. So we didn't do it, but I really wanted to.
That's one that you can keep in reserve for the future.
Yeah, it requires a lot of pieces to fit, but man, was it good. I really wish I could have done it. I thought about taking Mjolnir, like buying Thor's hammer and putting it on the heel's chest so he couldn't get up.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, like win a last man standing match like that. But the circumstances have to line up for that to work.
Yeah, you need the right situation for it.
Yeah. Luckily, we're in front of a bar crowd, so I can do ridiculous things like that and have it get over. Like, my most over spot is the stupidest thing. Like, it's so dumb, but they love it so much that it ended up turning in, like, just this spot ended up turning into an entire angle that turned us babyface because they liked it so much.
Sometimes it just happens.
Yeah. I put the guy, like, I'm going to give him the Mexican stretch. So I'm standing on his knees with his feet hooked on my shins, and I give him a wet willy. Then my brother comes over and sucks my finger like it's a penis. And then I put it in my opponent's mouth. And then it evolved to where I'm putting my finger in my butt, and you can't see me do air quotes, but I am.
Yeah.
And then put it in my opponent's mouth. And that evolved into a whole angle where me and my brother were in an actual, like, polyamorous homosexual relationship with the third guy that was in the group. And we just did it at first because to pop ourselves, we thought it was funny. And we thought we would get heat for it because, you know, we're doing, quote, gay stuff, like kissing him on. He would, during our entrance, me and my brother would stand on either side of him, and he would lean forward with his chin out, and we would lean in like super, one leg up kind of.
Yeah, like the kind of the pin-up stance.
Yeah, exactly. And we thought we would get heat, but they started to buy into the relationship, and that turned into a whole angle where he broke up with us, and like it was just amazing. Fans were completely behind it, like. It worked out so well. And then we went from being, our characters were like super jocks, which is why I couldn't do any of the nerd stuff, to super emos because our boyfriend broke up with us and now we're sad.
I totally buy that character development.
It was one of the most rewarding storylines I've ever been involved in.
Oh, I can absolutely just hear that in the way that you talk about it.
Yeah, I truly loved it. We didn't ask the promoter to start doing the relationship either. And when he was like, "What are you guys doing?" We explained it. He was like, "Okay, I don't care." I'm like, "Sweet." You never know how people are going to react when you want to pitch something that's like, I don't. Let's say queer. You don't know how they're going to react. And luckily my promoter is not only was he okay with it, he was all for it. He was like, okay, we're going to push this and we're going to like go with it because the fans are going with it. And it ended up being really successful for him and for us.
That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So moving on next, I mean, kind of following on a similar thread to that,
sure.
How does it feel for you seeing the growth in LGBT representation in wrestling and kind of in the general scope of wrestling on the internet as well?
I love seeing people being able to express who they are more freely and that being accepted. Like a few decades ago, let's go back to the Attitude Era, like gay characters were not seen in a positive light at all. They were often the butt of a joke.
Yeah, it was more often not that that being gay was like an angle or a gimmick.
Yeah, and not in a positive way either.
No, not so.
And to see that change was rewarding for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people in the community. But I've been very lucky in the people I work with are all very pro, like, queer people, and I've never had any trouble. The one person who like dropped the F-bomb on me was thrown out of the locker room and never invited back. And if you saw the guy who was doing the throwing, you would understand that he never would want to come back. Adam Knight is, so I'm 6 feet tall. He's like half a foot taller than me and probably hovering around 300 pounds of just huge man.
Oh, wow. Now that's a locker room enforcer if I've ever heard one.
Yeah. If he says, you better get the fuck out of here or I'm going to carry you out of here. He left and he never came back. Yeah. And I know that there's a lot of people who aren't so lucky and they have to hide who they are maybe, or can't feel comfortable talking about who they are. But seeing it shift towards more and more and more companies, and particularly the fan base, because that's what's causing this to happen. If the fans didn't follow along, this would not happen. Like if the fans shit on everyone who is queer, like they would not be accepted by promoters.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm happy that more promoters are kind of taking this up and helping to support and build this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I sometimes feel that I'm like bad representation because there's nothing about my character that says I'm a queer person. Like if you look at Effie, for example, are you familiar with him?
I'm very familiar with Effie.
The fact that he's like LGBTQ is very prominent in his character.
Yeah.
But me, I'm a guy who's like, okay, so I'm going to do a whole bunch of wrist locks and then we're going to go home. And like, that's my character is obviously a little bit more than that, as I've said, but like generally speaking, there's nothing about my look or the way I perform or talk where me being queer like plays into it. So sometimes I feel like I'm a bad representative of the community because if you were to look at me on a poster, you wouldn't be able to tell at all. Yeah. And like, you know, what does a gay person look like? Who knows, right? But there's some people where it's completely their character, and I feel they're better representation than me.
No, I definitely understand that.
But just never experiencing barriers after I came, like nobody treated me different after I came out publicly.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really big developments. Yeah,
I wish for a world where like nobody even had to come out. Like people cared so little that it's just like, okay. And like even the people who are queer didn't feel that like they had to, because it shouldn't be a big deal. You just are born this way and that's how it is. And that's kind of the end of it. And like, if in a world where like nobody cared, you wouldn't have to.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much my thoughts on it. And the same kind of thing I've expressed to a lot of people I know, where it's like, you know, being in a fortunate space where it isn't a massive deal and being able to kind of just be like, yeah, this is me. Okay.
Yeah. Like, I remember back in high school, if you had like long hair, people would be like, you're gay. Like as a boy, you're gay. And then
trust me, growing up in the UK, if you did anything that was even slightly out of the norm, you were probably going to be called gay.
It's my rebuttal was always like, how do you know it's gay? It's kind of suspicious.
Mine was always, okay, so what of it?
Yeah, that's totally fair too. But to see it evolve, even from when I went from high school to university, somebody would come out and actually say like, guys, I'm gay. And everyone would go like, all right, so do you want a pizza or like... it was just amazing. Like, even it's obviously people like growing up and getting older and learning. Like, I don't believe that even at 12 you should know the difference between right and wrong. I don't think that being young isn't, like, the controversy with Sammy Guevara and what he said about Sasha Banks, and people are saying, oh, he's young, he made a mistake. He's 21.
Yeah.
He knows that that's inappropriate. Like, I knew that was inappropriate at 12. How does he not know at 21? Like, I didn't buy that excuse for 1 second. But
yeah, that's been our reactions, reading a lot of people that have had stuff come out about them in the last year. Oh,
Brit Rest, you guys got hit really hard by.
Yeah, no, it's been a massive thing for the scene, and obviously it's kind of ruined a lot of people's trust in it, and obviously people are doing their best to build it back up. But it was always one of those cases of every time you kind of start building the tower up, someone comes and knocks it down again.
Yeah. I've obviously, because of how I started watching wrestling, I was a huge fan of the British scene. Funny story how I got introduced to Progress. So I was wrestling, just doing my thing, and then somebody new in the locker room goes like, "You remind me of Zack Sabre Jr." And I was like, "Who the fuck is that?" And then I started watching his matches, and I'm like, "Oh, this guy is me. I'm trying to be this. This is what I want to do." And really much better than me.
We've always caught a lot of flack for our love of Zack Sabre Jr. because he comes from a place not far from where all of us live.
I love him, so we could talk. We'll talk Zack Sabre Jr. all day if you want. So I felt like, even though I'm over here, I felt a connection with your scene.
Yeah.
And when that hit, I was like devastated. So many people that I admired or really enjoyed watching, whole companies that I enjoyed watching. And then, like I said, Quackenbush was important to me. And I even got to wrestle him. I got to wrestle somebody who inspired me to become a wrestler. And then stuff came out about him. I actually quit. I'm like, I'm done. I can't be a part of this industry anymore.
No, I absolutely don't blame you for that when you're having to kind of process something like that. I mean, for us, in compared to obviously the story you've just said, it's much more smaller fry. But I remember when everything did come out, it was maybe only about a month and a half after we properly started this.
Wow.
So it was one of the first things we were kind of reporting on. So it was quite a shock, and it's been a shock for a lot of people. But I mean, in the same vein, in the rebuild from that, the push for representation of all kinds in the British scene has been huge. And companies have really changed the way that they're looking at things. They're looking to new audiences and thinking, okay, what can we be looking at? Personally, I think in the time from it, actually, the growth of intergender wrestling in the UK has actually been quite positive. I definitely feel like I see more of it being booked now than before.
Good. I love intergender matches. I don't understand the controversy behind them. I don't get it. It doesn't, like, my brain can't process the problem. Like, I just don't understand.
Yeah, no, we've always been huge advocates of it. I absolutely love it as a both as a separate style, but also because I think for wrestling there doesn't need to be those defined barriers.
Yeah, like it's not the NFL, and even then, if a female or a woman wants to play in the NFL, she should be allowed to try and succeed there. But we're in the NFL, if you're being tackled, you're not really consenting to being tackled.
Yeah.
You are in a way because you're on the field, but it's not like, okay, you can tackle me in this super safe way where I'm not going to get hurt. You know what? Well, hurt seriously. Yeah. So the risk is so much more It's still there, obviously, because wrestling is dangerous inherently. But, you know, if you're throwing a forearm properly, you're not going to concuss somebody.
Yeah, it's always been one of the mantras that we throw around. Lots of other people do. You know, that there's no unsafe moves, only unsafe workers.
I would largely agree, but there are moves that scare me because they're so dangerous.
There are exceptions to that rule.
Yeah.
I don't think every person's going to be wanting to take burning hammers all the time.
Yeah, not in a huge rush. I would take the one that's just basically the upside down FU. I would take that one all day. Yeah. But yes, I had a lot of intergender matches for a while because I was in a relationship with a female wrestler. And once that got out, they were like, oh, so you guys are going to wrestle all the time. And I was like, well, I guess. I mean,
it makes sense.
If you want. So yeah, I ended up in an angle with her, and our audience is a bar audience, so they're all older. They totally enjoyed it, and they thought nothing was wrong with it. It was received very well. It was only the same guy that dropped the F-bomb on me.
That was the one that was annoyed about it?
That had a problem, yeah, because I made a video about intergender wrestling and how it actually is realistic, because I actually showed footage of an MMA fight between a smaller woman and a man, and she beat the ever-living shit out of him because she knew how to fight and he didn't.
You know, there's people out there go, oh, it's not realistic or whatever, and I'm like, if you're going to call it not realistic, we need to have a little bit of a conversation about some elements of wrestling.
Let's talk about the Irish whip.
Yeah.
Why would you not stop running? Why?
I will simply stop running respectfully.
Why, if somebody's coming on the top rope for a crossbody, why wouldn't you take one step to the left and just let the guy hit the ground? Like,
yeah, it's one of the it's one of the spots that I saw at a show once where someone like went up to the top and went for a drop kick, and the person just like walked to the left.
See, that to me is hilarious. That would get over huge with me.
Oh, I absolutely love all of that kind of stuff.
My favorite sort of, I don't want to say bad, like high flying spot, because like obviously he's made way more money than me. But for example, like Jeff Hardy, he hits the twist of fate, takes his time, climbs the top rope, does his pose, does the swanton, then goes for the pin. I'm like, dude, could have just pinned him after the twist of fate. Like, look how long he was down.
We had a whole conversation about this. So we were talking about Batista and how it's one of the tiniest things that irks me is that he does the powerbomb, sits out, then gets off and pins, and doesn't just pin from the sit out. And it's this tiniest thing. But I look at it and I'm like, surely it would be easier to just not move.
You would think. I mean, Liger did it for years, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously it's not supposed to be realistic. So why all of a sudden when a woman is involved, does it have to become realistic? And don't give me this, like, they try and give me the domestic violence bullshit.
Yeah, we've heard that many a time.
Nobody willingly participates in domestic violence, right?
No.
This is two people who have willingly decided that they are going to have a, quote, fight in a sporting environment. And it's not like someone who's never beaten his wife before is going to see the match and suddenly go home and Hulk out. Like, that's not a realistic scenario. So I don't, like, obviously that excuse or argument, if you want to call it that, is completely invalid. Like, no one's going to see an intergender wrestling match and then suddenly become violent towards their spouse. That's just, it's not going to happen.
So just moving on to our final question. What do you think of the place that the Canadian independent scene is in? Because I've seen a lot of people talking about how they kind of don't know about it, or they don't really know that it's there compared to say in America.
Mhm.
And really, what do you think could be done to build up its profile? Because as we both know, Canada has a very rich pro wrestling heritage.
Yes, absolutely. I would say that it being relatively secret, like a secret or a hidden gem, if you will, in the wrestling
Yes.
world, that is its biggest problem. There are people that, like, for example, there's a guy named Sean Moore who I swear, he is going to be in New Japan or something very soon. He is so good that even like during matches I've had with him, he will be doing something to me and I go, man, this guy's really good. Like in my mind.
Yeah.
And he's not getting the exposure he deserves. And for anybody who wants to check him out, it was a very short match, but very, very good. Check out Super Kicked, Sean Moore versus I forget who it was, but check him out. Even that short little example of his ability will tell you that this guy is a star somewhere. And the fact that more people don't know who he is Canada's biggest problem. Like Michael Richard Blaze is another example. I don't know what we need to do, but we need
Someone
to get
needs
out there
to get
more.
the word out.
Yes. I've tried convincing Andrew, the promoter for PCW, to like do like video production and like get the stuff online. But it's first of all, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
And the thing, he doesn't want to half-ass it, right? If he's going to do it, he wants it to be like really good, high quality stuff.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think it's very expensive, and I think that's the biggest hurdle right now. And then there's another company called CWE in town, which is doing very well. It tours all the way across Canada, which is unheard of by anybody else. That is insane. So I was going to be booked for a British company. I don't want to say where in case it doesn't work out.
Yep.
But before the pandemic, and I said, do I have to work for just you or can I work for other people? And they go, sure, we can even help you out. Do you mind driving 3 hours? And I just laughed my ass off because that for me is nothing. That's nothing.
Yeah, no, that's a very British thing, especially when I went over to the US and people were like, oh, cool, we'll be driving like 3 hours. And I'm going like, oh, 3 hours. And they're like, that's easy. That's like my normal drive to work.
Yeah. So for one weekend, I went in Winnipeg on Friday, and then Edmonton on the Saturday, and then Calgary. So on the Winnipeg, I will finish the show. I will drive the 15 hours to Edmonton
Oh, wow.
and wrestle my match. Then I will take whatever sleep I can, and then it's because Calgary is in the same province, it's much shorter. But then I drive the 15 hours home. So yeah, going 3 hours was nothing to me. So them going across the entire country is ridiculous.
Yeah, that must be a massive undertaking for them.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm not I want to be very diplomatic with what I have to say. They employ people who would make me uncomfortable, given my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it's nothing against the promoter or anything like that. It's just like, there's some people whose opinions I will strongly disagree with, and as does my lifestyle.
Yeah,
but
it's a very different environment to what you work in.
Yeah. So they deserve more exposure strictly just for doing that. The fact that they're going city to city each day across the country is insane. And they have a very strong product as well. Like, my bias is coming through here, but I prefer the type of style that PCW presents because it's much more what I'm accustomed to. CWE is, I would say, much more influenced by like the WWE most of the time.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, of course. I could be, whatever. I don't go to every show. But I like being a wrestler's wrestler and the crowd understanding, my, I don't know, wrist lock spot.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. You know, you're much more of the kind of the wrestler that more on the technical side rather
Yeah.
than say being. Whereas your thing isn't saying being big and flashy and going, look at me, I'm here.
Yeah, like I would say that the PCW crowd is a lot like the Progress crowd. They're similar in that the Progress crowd would, you know, they even if they liked Jimmy Havoc, they would boo him anyways. They like know what they're supposed to do and what have you. They go along with it, but they would appreciate Zack Sabre Jr. putting on a technical showcase.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's very much rooted in the kind of the British sensibility of wrestling.
Yes, absolutely. And I feel like if I was in front of the majority of their audiences, like little kids and stuff, if I'm sitting there like holding on an arm lever, they're not going to care.
Yeah, it's more doing something to show, you work a different style. You don't work the big flashy super big movements and the springboards and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's still a place for your wrestling style.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like I need to evolve as a performer. That's my own limitation. Like if somebody said I don't do counter wrestling, I would just go like, I don't think we can have a match. Like I don't know. I could do a hip toss, but I'm not a luchador. Like,
yeah.
So they present just a different style, and I think they deserve. I think PCW, CWE, even the other competitors, they deserve to be seen by more people, and like the experiences that I've got to do tucked away in Canada are nuts. Like Bret Hart has directly been involved in one of my matches. Bret Hart. He cost me the NXW title, and that's why I hate him. He is my enemy forever. Shawn Michaels was always better than him, and so was Mr. Perfect.
So would that be one of the things that you say is the issue, that it is quite difficult for people outside of Canada to see it?
Yes, absolutely. Like it is so easy for me to see a Rev Pro show or a Progress show or even the smaller independents. It's no trouble for me to go out and see them because your scene is so healthy and so strong.
Yeah, no, because I mean, like it's very easy to see lots of promotions that I mean, if we're talking I'm talking in terms of the Twitter sphere here, who may only have a couple hundred followers, but they'll have regularly updated YouTube channels.
Yes, and they will look good. Like they don't look like they're shot from somebody's iPhone.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know what steps are being taken to elevate everyone, but I know there was an on-demand service for Canadian wrestling for a while. I'm not sure if
kind
it's
of
still
in the
active
vein of like IWTV or something, or Fight or something like that, but for Canadian wrestling.
Yes. I believe the company was called CWC, and it was amazing. It was one of the best companies I have ever worked for. I went there, and it was like a whole new world to me. I'm like, there's protective mats on the ground. There's guardrails everywhere. Titantrons.
You're living the luxury life now.
Put up in like 4-star hotels. I'm like, what is going on? It was amazing.
I can't see the bar next to me.
Yeah, I got match of the night and match of the year there. No big deal.
Another win for the technical wrestlers among us.
Yes, absolutely. I think it was just because of the finish we did, which was crazy. And so the Gentlemen's Club finishing move is my partner will have the guy almost like the Razor's Edge, but the guy's facing inside the ring, and he'll throw him over his head, and then I'll do the V-trigger as the guy's falling and hit him in the head.
Oh, I absolutely love the sound of that. Just another
Yeah.
reason why the Canadian independency should work better at getting video, so more people can see this.
Yeah. Like my matches with Kenny, they get like 1,000 views, and I'm like, that's with Kenny, and I'm like, what's wrong? What is the problem? I don't understand. But I think PCW's audience is the live audience. They want to be there. They want to experience it for themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge problem with putting those kinds of shows on demand. I hate to go back to Progress because controversy, but like when I watched their stuff on demand, I never felt like I was there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when you watch a WWE program, it's so well done and produced that you feel like you're part of the audience.
Yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, you have to be there. Or like even ECW back in the day, you have to be there to experience it.
Yeah, watching video of it kind of from the fixed camera doesn't feel the same as having been there, being in the audience. So
yeah,
maybe for a lot of them, they're kind of, well, due to the money that is involved in it, not having access to the kind of production value that lends itself to on-demand video.
Yeah, exactly. Like Andrew doesn't want people to pay for a product that's not worth paying for. You know,
And I can very much admire that philosophy.
Yeah, he's not going to put out a subpar product. And I completely understand it. I'm not like knocking him for it. I love him for it. I just like, we got to get more production in this whole scene across the board. Everybody. I want everybody to be successful, not just where I work, everywhere.
Well, that's absolutely fantastic. And it's been lovely having you to join us. If you do take one last chance to just plug your socials or where anyone else can find you, and then.
Sure. I am Leo London 23 on Twitter and Instagram, and my YouTube channel is called Yugi Leo, where I put up some of my wrestling videos with my commentary and my Yu-Gi-Oh deck profiles and all that stuff. And I have a Patreon under Yugi Leo where you can access more wrestling matches and more stuff like that, and get t-shirts and all that nonsense.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Leo.
No problem. Thank you for having me.